Hello and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and I am back from hiatus where I was collecting myself in the cloistered convent of curious souls, discalced, somewhere out beyond the outer Hebrides, and we're back here in the Sonnetarium where I am cock of the walk and belle of the ball. And if you know anything about me, you know how much I love cock and balls. But as I say, we are here once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainder section of an unnamed local library which may have a pair of literary lions named Patience and Fortitude on the front steps overseeing our project. And the bard knows that if we need anything as we're going through the 154 sonnets of the 1609 quarto version of Shakespeare sonnets, we need patience and fortitude. So when last we met, the waves were making toward the pebbled shore of Sonnet 60, and now as we approach Sonnet 61, if we accept the fact that Sonnet 61 is a progression of the story, it looks like those waves have washed right back out to sea, leaving our lovers a bit adrift. But did they? Are they? Do we accept Sonnet 61 as a continuation of the story from Sonnet 1 through 60 just because they are numbered that way? Well, let's consider the chronology of the sonnets. Now, I spoke last time of Paul Edmondson and Stanley Wells' wonderful book, All the Sonnets of Shakespeare, in which they attempt to order every single sonnet that Shakespeare ever wrote, including the ones in the plays that were not included in the 1609 quarto. And they place them in chronological order. And according to the scholarship, Edmondson, Wells, and others, thus far, that scholarship surmises that all of the sonnets were probably written over a period of 27 years, from 1582 to 1609, with sonnets 1 through 60 written after those that we will now be reading. So the ones we'll be reading now were written before sonnets 1 to 60, according to the scholarship. So Edmondson and Wells include a rather complicated little chart on page 24 of their introduction, which we will put up here or here somewhere. And by we, I mean, of course, my jack-off-all-trades, Dr. Franken-sonnet, who happens to be the cousin of my very old friend, Lady Mariposa, which, if you haven't seen her famous interviews, you might really want to go to the description box to check out her interviews where she interviews the spirits of dead celebrities like Betty Davis and Mae West, to name a few. You know, what's a new season without a few plugs, right? But, plugs aside, back to Shakespeare. Now, this confusing chart that we have here on page 24, I will read the methodology that they used while you peruse the chart, just so you get an idea of how they've come about their supposition of the order of in which the sonnets were written. So Edmondson and Wells say on page 24, this edition uses the scholarship which helped to construct the chronology of Shakespeare's plays and poems in the new Oxford Shakespeare, published in 2016. Its methodology relies largely on study of the development of Shakespeare's vocabulary and his grammatical preferences in the sequence of his works insofar as they can be established. It is, for instance, noticeable that Sonnet 73 includes the word sunset, which occurs elsewhere in the canon only in Henry VI, Part 3, Romeo and Juliet, and King John. A sonnet published in 1609 was almost certainly written in the early mid-1590s. Shakespeare's grammatical preferences can be helpful too. He uses eth or eth rather than the es verb ending much more regularly in plays usually dated before 1600. Work based on the criteria such as these demonstrates the textual chronologies of this kind are always theories, hypotheses, and will no doubt continue to be tested and to evolve. Now, I admit I'm a bit mystified how one would go about determining the evolution of the language usage in a writer's work, especially when that writer's work ranges so widely over drama and poetics. And I make no bones about the fact that I have never pretended to be inclined toward cunning linguistic tendencies. So I'll just have to take the scholar's word for it that this chronology is reputable for now. All of which simply leads us to the observation that sonnets 1 through 60, supposedly written 1595 to 97, or originally composed, I should say, which we've already covered, were written after the sonnets we're going to cover, 61 to 77, supposedly first composed 1593 to 1595, which would throw our project of considering these as a progressive narrative into the trash. But, and it's a big but, being the trashy dame that I am, I'll note two reasons why we'll continue undeterred on our project. Number one, it's fun. These sonnets were organized by someone, maybe Shakespeare, maybe not, in this order for some reason. So we'll honor that order by reading them sequentially just to see what comes from it. And two, as Edmondson and Wells point out, there's every reason to believe that regardless of when these first iterations of the sonnets were originally composed, they were probably, and I say certainly, they were almost certainly revised, and revised heavily, and reordered before they were published in the 1609 quarto. So I'm going to make sure that my, there it is, feather stays pretty. So anyone who's ever written anything will understand the importance and the necessity of revision. And I certainly know what it's like to collate work written 20 years ago and revise it extensively and mix it with newer work and reorder it so that it somehow seems to cohere as a book. Great Escapes from Detroit by Joseph O'Malley, available by Amazon and at Kindle in the description below. But, plugs aside, revision isn't always pretty and it isn't always successful, but every writer has the opportunity to revise and reorder their work before it comes to full publication in a book, so of course, why not Shakespeare? All right, so onward we go into Sonnet 61, regardless of when it was actually first composed. So let's read Sonnet 61, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Let me get my notes all in order, and my book, my handy-dandy penguin, all in order. And we'll start with Sonnet 61. Is it thy will thy image should keep open my heavy eyelids to the weary night? Dost thou desire my slumbers should be broken while shadows like to thee do mock my sight? Is it thy spirit that thou send'st from thee so far from home into my deeds to pry, to find out shames and idle hours in me, the scope and tenor of thy jealousy? Oh no. Thy love, though much, is not so great. It is my love that keeps mine eye awake, mine own true love that doth my rest defeat, to play the watchman ever for thy sake. For thee watch I, whilst thou dost wake elsewhere. From me far off, with others all too near. Okay, so Sonnet 61. They are definitely separated. The first quatrain, and if you'll notice the construction of this, there's the first quatrain, the second quatrain, and the third quatrain. Is it, and then the third quatrain contains it is, so there's a flipping going on here. Is it thy image, is it thy will, thy image should keep open my heavy eyelids to the weary night? Do you want me to stay awake thinking about you, thinking about the way that you look? Is it, do you do it on purpose? Are you so beautiful on purpose to keep me awake at night? Dost thou desire my slumbers should be broken while shadows like to thee, meaning shades or visions that look exactly like you, mock my sight. Mock my sight in meaning because you're not actually here. I can't actually see you or touch you, but I am kept awake thinking about the way that you look. The memory of you, in fact, taunts me. And do you want it that way? Is it your will? Second quatrain, is it thy spirit that thou send'st from thee, so far from home into my deeds to pry? Here we go from is it your will to is it your spirit. So it's as if actually sending a ghost. We move from taunt to haunt. Are you haunting me? Do you actually send your own ghost to keep me on edge? So far from home into my deeds to pry. Are you watching me? Are you stalking me? To find out shames and idle hours in me, whatever I might be doing in bed alone when you're not here, who knows? The scope and tenor of thy jealousy. Are you doing this because you're jealous of me? Because you love me so much? Third quatrain. Oh no. No, you're not. It's not your will, and it's not your spirit that you've sent for me that keeps me awake. Oh no, thy love, though much, is not so great. It's okay, but it's not so great. It is my love that keeps mine eye awake, mine own true love that doth my rest defeat. I keep myself awake. I keep myself awake because of the love that I bear you. To play the watchman ever for thy sake. I'm thinking about you. I can't sleep because I'm thinking about you. For thee watch I is the couplet. And the tables have turned with that is it, and no, it is. There's a declaration here. And everything's turned. It's not the lover who's sending, or the beloved who's keeping the lover awake. It's the lover, him or herself, who's being kept awake. For thee watch I. I'm waiting for you, whilst thou dost wake elsewhere. And wake here could mean while you're awake somewhere or while you're frolicking somewhere in bed. From me far off. You're far away from me, with others all too near. I'm waiting for you while you're perhaps with other people who are all too near you. And as dear dirty Stephen Booth has noted, all, the word all is often used to pun on genitalia. It meant penis, but also the sound of all could mean whole, so it could also mean vagina. So others all too near. So others genitalia too near is another possible reading for this. So we've got a lot going on here. And it is clear that these lovers are apart because the couplet says so, from me far off, with others far too near. Now, is there any suggestion that there is a gender specified either as the lover or as the beloved? No, there is not. There's no clue whatsoever. But my cousin, Shinola Gay, once did do a lip sync of Peggy Ashcroft saying this poem, and I'll link that below as well. But there's no clue. It could be a male to a male, a female to a female, a male to a female to a male. It's flexible sexual, which is my new term for Shakespearean gender bending. It could be any number of combinations. Dramatically, this would work for any jealous lovers. Could be posthumous to Imogen in Cymbeline, or Othello to Desdemona. Although in Shakespeare, in all of the plays, there are enough jealous lovers, many to go around, where almost anyone could be saying this to another one, where there's even any suggestion of jealousy. So narratively, if we decide, or rather if we imagine that the ordering of these sonnets should be followed, and I am saying that they should be, then we might suppose that our lovers had a rather lovely respite, being reunited from about Sonnet 51 to about Sonnet 60. They were together, now they're apart again. Unwillingly, or so it seems, at least for the narrator. So it seems, as we follow along, we're in for more contemplations on love, lost love, lust, and jealousy, and how one manages one's time in the absence of a lover. And I, for one, am up for it. Are you? I hope so, because we're back. The Shakey Sonnet Show is back, and I hope we will have a wonderful time exploring all the wonders that are in Shakespeare, as we all individually explore all the wonders that are in the world. Pay attention. Until we meet again, I'm Tootight Lautrec.